Welcome, everybody, to our monthly live demo series. We're calling this our Office Hours program with our field CTO, the man, the myth, the legend, Benjamin Henry. Welcome, Ben, and welcome to everybody. All right, today we're going to cover a very interesting topic that's coming up more and more. How do I show the value of unstructured data management? Right? It's we'll get into why. I think you all know why it's increasingly important, but just a quick review in terms of these office hours webinars. We do want to make them super interactive, so you can just use the chat panels, yeah, ask your questions. Typically, that happens once we get into the product. We've had a bunch of these already. This is our fifth. So do go to our website if you want to see the recordings. The cost savings one hit this topic as well pretty hard. We introduced Kappa data services and smart data workflows. We covered migration, and we're going to cover migration again because there's a lot of updates there. We'll cover that in August. And then the last one was our most popular session on deep analytics and the global metadatabase. Really great demonstration and discussion. So, Ben, let's jump right in. The importance of building a data management business case. This is a topic you know well, and you spent a lot of time writing about and kind of working on. Why is this so important to you?
Yeah, as you pointed out, I'm pretty passionate about this topic, Darren. Throughout my career, it hasn't just been what's going on here, what's going on there. Everything has been a data-driven response. If we want to make changes, we want to propose different solutions, it goes back to the data and it goes back to how much it's costing the organization. So anybody in their career right now should know how much their storage is costing them, how much their scroll looks like. Ah, there's the slide. Perfect. Impact to your savings if I make these changes or want to tier data. At any given second, you should know this platform costs this much per gigabyte per month. The world is evolving. Darren, I think you were going to talk a little bit about that here real quick.
Well, you brought up this concept of north, south, east, west. I mean, a lot of folks might just be looking down and figuring out, the dials and the knobs and trying to tune things and get better performance. But that's really changed. This term FinOps is gaining a lot of steam, and I think you said it used to be separate. Now it's really part of the role.
Yeah, exactly. So when we look at this, you're again used to being heads down. I have this work to get done. You hear the term a lot, manage up in the organization, but it's not just about managing up. You have to do a full 360, north, south, east, west, and all the different directions in between. So how do you accomplish that? And again, it's not about being heads down. It's about being aware. It's about promoting what's going on. It's knowing your expenditures and it's automating that. And through Komprise, we make it simple. Most of the traditional styles, you have to go pull the spreadsheet out. You've got to update the cost, download some CSVs, work with your different organizations to find all the cost and your FinOps team. Well, FinOps is being rolled into every role. There might be an organization in your or a department in your organization that does that specifically, but it will bleed into you if it's not already. So before that sweat starts to form of this sounds complicated or anytime I approach this, it takes too much time. We're going to show you how simple that is, how quick it can be, and all of it can be automated behind the scenes to even send the reports out to your organization to promote awareness, promote chargeback, showback, sometimes called shameback. It's all built in. It's all ready to rock and roll today.
And we also have some templates. Our customer success team works with the customers to kind of build this out, quantify, document, and create different assets to be able to share as well. So that's another thing we can work with customers on. I know in your previous life you had a kind of a weekly meeting and you had a dashboard where you had to share the impact and what was a cold data. I think you called it your cold data strategy. Any comment on that?
Yeah, cold data strategy. It was every week. The entire leadership team, cross-functional, jumped on a call. Each organization, how much are you spending? How much are you saving? What can we do next to turn the next knob, to pull the next lever, achieve additional savings? And while all those other teams had to, again, rummage through spreadsheets, contact other organizations, at the click of a button, I had my reports done for me every morning.
Nice. And that was a heavy tiering use case, right? Moving off on-prem kind of primary storage into cloud.
It was, yeah, that was one of the situations where everyone was notified we had to save cost across the organization, specifically within the structured and unstructured world. So I was focused on unstructured, and we had to achieve a 35% reduction Well, through Komprise, it was actually more like a 65, 70% reduction in overall costs. It was a fantastic project.
Fantastic. All right, let's get into it, Ben. What are you going to take us through?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the plan page and the cost models there so you can set this and automate it. We're going to talk about the built-in reports and the automation that powers them. Then we're going to jump into deep analytics to show you some details on how those reports are built. Or if you need to show the details, so the built-in reports are more of like a management leadership style. What if you need to see the actual data behind them? That's our metadata base with deep analytics. And then we'll talk about some best practices as well as TFT, transparent file tables, and our integration with Apache Iceberg. So here, again, starts with the plan page. First thing you always see is our data donut right here. If you want to edit the cost model, which I always recommend doing this for your storage cost, you get to define the hardware, the backup, the software, the number of backups you're keeping, because that all leads into your overall storage costs. If you're when you're tiering to the cloud, or if you're doing on-prem, you can choose which one. You set your costs. So it combines everything in here to your cost models. So when I hit save and continue, all of my costs will be projected over here on the right-hand side as I set these plans up to tier. So the plan I have right here is a generic plan that has no tiering set up. I have another one over here that's already set up, and you'll see the cost model build out. So if I look at this and I set my tiering to 1 year, I start to see how much savings I can achieve over a 3-year projection. I also get some more graphs down here about those projections based on my data growth. Within the plan, there are groups. You could have different groups with different time policies. And again, those will all adjust this profile right here that leads to your costs on the right-hand side. Now, these reports here are downloadable in 2 different formats. You can do the analysis summary report in a PDF. You can also do it in a CSV. When I pull the CSV, I get the breakdown. But the cool part about the CSV is it's also importable to other platforms, Snowflake, Databricks, Microsoft Fabric, anything that's a CSV, you can ingest over there. I can also click on the usage tab and talk about my consumption by file types, either by size or quantity of files. I can see the profile of my data, and I can adjust this. Right now, I have it set to all shares. I can set it to specific shares. I can create groups of shares. So I can profile this in many different ways. Again, this graph here talks about the files by size. So I get to see what category of files is the largest consumer? Is it small data, large data, a combination thereof? And if I'm adding the option to look at tiering and archiving, I get that purple bar down here that says this is what's projected to be tiered based on each one of these different categories of the files. I get to see top owners, top groups, and so forth. But again, this is a report that can be extracted in a CSV format. You can continue to model this into your different platforms such as Snowflake, Databricks, Microsoft Fabric, and others. But what if I want to do more of that cost analysis that we talked
Just
about
before you
earlier? Okay.
jump to reports, Ben, on the
Yeah.
cost model, and we were having a conversation about OpEx versus CapEx. How do you, are there other costs that aren't here that need to be considered in your overall modeling, and other things here that maybe sometimes customers miss in terms of adding costs and tracking in the cost model?
Yeah, that's a great question there. So if you have an OpEx model, it's pretty easy to know how much you're spending on per gigabyte, per terabyte, per month, per year. When it's OpEx, a lot of times what we see is the initial investment in the storage platform, and maybe the first 1 through 3 years of maintenance is baked into that acquisitions cost. What a lot of customers are missing is that year 3, 4, 5, and beyond, if you're running on something longer than a 5-year depreciation cycle. A lot of customers are also not considering the rack space that it's consuming, the heating and cooling, the power it's consuming. If you have data center operations teams, how much does it cost for them to provide 24/7 care for that? Should there be an outage? Should there be drives that need to be swapped? Any kind of troubleshooting or diagnostics, escorting vendors to there? That's a sunk cost that you need to consider on a per unit basis, how much that costs to operate. So folding all of that in on-prem, CapEx versus on-prem or in the cloud, OpEx, a little more difficult to calculate, but it's worth going through that exercise because it gives you the total cost of ownership and shows you even more savings when you start planning out your tiering and archiving process.
Good stuff. It kind of ties back to that need to be more of a FinOps
FinOps.
specialist.
Yeah. Yep. That was definitely part of my previous role all the time. All right. Another question I get asked too, Darren, this is, you actually triggered my memory on this, is what if I have more than one storage cost? Simple. Create more than one plan. Every plan can have its own storage cost built into it. So if you have one set of storage that is OpEx, another set of storage that's CapEx, or you've got maybe three different vendors that are CapEx that are different costs, you just create a different plan, put those different storage appliances in those plans. You can model them differently and report on them differently.
That one got a thumbs up. Also, if people are new to Komprise, you're looking at this just by one site, right? So do you want to just
Yes.
mention the concept of sites?
Yeah, so there's sites. I actually have my roll up of all sites on my dashboard page, which is something we probably have not showcased many times before. So I can see everything from a roll up over here. But in data stores, I get more of the concept of sites because I see the drop down here of Atlanta, Boston, Phoenix, Santa Fe. I can have these all implemented and set up by different sites. So I have a single pane of glass across the enterprise.
I
Awesome.
heard someone used the term a single glass of pain, but that was for a different product.
I almost stumbled on it there. All right. See, these are live. Have some fun. All right. So let's go to reports. Let's talk more about the reports that are built into Komprise. You'll see these are all called sample because that's what they are. So you can create your own. I'm going to start with the showback. So I set my cost model. Natural progression is how much is my storage spend today across the enterprise? Let's start there. So I start with
And
the sample showback.
I want to just set this up also. What you're showing today really is powered by the global meta database and deep analytics. So if I'm just a migration only user or partner on this, some of these features won't be available to me. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, talk to your account team. Talk to them if you're migration only, don't have access to these features today. Engage them. Talk about running a small proof of concept. Talk about optionalities on upgrading to the full product. That's your key to getting into these areas here.
Cool.
All right. So again, we're going to drop into the showback report because again, we talked about setting our cost model. So we want to wind this up and say, okay, let me build an executive report that shows how much my storage is costing today. So I can simply go in here and say filter by share, and by share, it could also be sites. If I select nothing, it's going to report on everything. So let me hit close. And when I download this report, it's going to download in a PDF format for all of my sites. So I'll go ahead and open this up. So I get my total data, cost before tiering, and if I start modeling my data and I start tiering my data, you're going to see my storage costs go down. I haven't tiered any data yet, so I'm not seeing any difference between before and after, but based on my cost model, which is an industry standard by default when you deploy Komprise, but again, I always recommend you customize it. This 2 petabytes is costing the organization about $3.5 million per year. I get to see a heat map represented in this chart here. I get to see the top shares, the biggest consumers of the data. And I also get to break into some more of those reports below this. But this is designed in an executive format. Page 1 tells me a lot. You can cut this down to 1 page. You can take screenshots of this. You can model it in many different ways. But this is costing me $3.5 million a year. Well, how do I quickly identify some waste? But before I do that, how do I customize this report to sites, to organizations, to individual teams and shares? Well, that starts with, again, the filter here, and then saving this report for those sites, for those organizations. So let me start by filter by just Atlanta. Let me hit apply. And now I want to save this report. I'm going to call it Atlanta Showback. And I'm going to hit save. I'm going to say view report here at the top. Now it's going to take me into the Atlanta Showback report. I can decide whether I do or don't want that cost model included. I can then also schedule this report to run on a reoccurring basis. I can also send it from right here, but I want to schedule this report. I want this to send once a month. I can choose what time I want it to go out. I can choose my dates for the start and stop of the scheduling. If I don't want to end it, then I just leave those blank. And then I put in my recipients on who this goes to. I could be a site lead. It could be a data steward. It could be a research organization. You can put in as many email addresses as you want in here, separated by commas, and it will send on a reoccurring basis. So now this starts playing into your showback, your chargeback Some people call it the showback of how much are you spending on a recurring basis. We get back to that compass I talked about earlier, managing not just up, but north, south, east, west. Let your peers, let your colleagues know how much their storage is costing the organization on a recurring basis. And this doesn't have to be at the site. I'm going to go ahead and go back to reports. I'm going to leave this page. I'm going to go back here. You can drill down to even individual shares. So if I wanted to go back to Darren and say, you know what, let's take a look at this. Let's do file, save copy as over here.
Well, I suspect you're going to pick on marketing as you do.
I always do, Darren. You know that. Come on. So let's view your report. How much is your share costing the organization? All right. Generating report. Let's open that up. So right here, Darren, marketing is costing the organization almost $500,000 a year. Let's talk about some ways we can reduce some of that spend. All right. Perfect.
What would I? Well, yeah. Let's maybe just a real world scenario. What would I do with that information? You and I would have a meeting and talk through how we can set up some tiering policies, or what would the next step be?
Yeah, so that leads into the next report here. Is, basically, Darren, hey, you're costing the organization $500,000 a year. We need to find ways to save money now. So let's use a couple of these other reports interactively in a session to kind of drill into that a little bit. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start with orphan data. Orphan data is one of the biggest overspends by organizations. So I'm going to go again. I'm going to filter by. I'm going to choose the marketing share alone. I'm going to hit apply. And I just want to look at the orphan data in the marketing share. Orphan data is defined by users that no longer have identities because they've left the organizations. The various teams that control security have deleted their user IDs. So they're unresolved SIDs. So let's take a look at this report. All right. So right here within that marketing share, we've already defined that we can save $150,000 by doing something with that orphan data. And we can continue to refine that because Darren, you might come back to me and say, okay, that's great. These users are no longer here, but some of that data might still be used. Well, that's what this chart tells me is that some of the data is still hot. So let's take a different approach to this. Let's say anything that's orphaned that hasn't been used in 3 years or more, let's throw it out. We need to get rid of that data. Speaking of getting rid of data, that's where your legal and compliance teams are great to have as partners in these processes, in these projects. Legal teams love to set document retention policies. It reduces your overall exposure and risk to your organization. They want data to be removed based on those retention policies. So we can do that with a broad stroke of saying anything older than X number of days, weeks, months, years, based on a given share or organization is purged automatically. You can do that through metadata enrichment within our global metadata base. We'll talk about that also in a minute. So let me
So now that you've
back.
shown me this information, you and I agree that this is what we want to do. You would probably go back and use deep analytics to create a query and then confine it, or what would you do behind the scenes as a next step as a storage admin?
Exactly. So you're definitely leading into it. I'm going to show one more report and then we're going to talk about more about this orphan data and how we can do something with it. So perfect segue. Great. Here in a minute. Let me leave this page, show one more. Potential duplicates is another report I really like to work with organizations and show them and give them the ability to not just look at duplicate data on a single storage controller. A lot of storage platforms will say, hey, we deduplicate the data, or we can show you duplicates in our ecosystem. That's great, but we can show you across the enterprise. You can look across different storage platforms. And again, you have that single pane of glass to find duplicates with all these filters on the left-hand side. So you can narrow this search down based on, hey, I want to look at this entire site. Or maybe if I want to look at this entire site, I want to look for specific file names. And you can even work with, starts with, contains, ends with, more like a regular expression. You can look at last modified access dates. You can look at only certain file extensions, file sizes. You can look at a specific owner. So you have a lot of power and flexibility to refine and define this report. You also have the ability to say what makes up a duplicate file. Are we looking at just the file name and extension? Do you want to look just at the extension? You're looking at the matched created time. You're looking at the last modified time. So you can, again, refine this a little bit on what you feel is a duplicate file. Same as the other reports, I can either set the filters here, download the report for instant access to it, or I can turn around and save this as a copy to make it its own report defined for a single organization, a single share, an entire cluster, an entire site. The choice is yours. So, all right, pausing there for a second. And, let's say we're having that conversation with Darren again. And Darren said, okay, that's cool. You've showed me my duplicate, or it's not my duplicate, my orphan data. I want more details. Let's see some more information about that. Well, that's our global metadata base. So I'm going to show you how that report is created behind the scenes. So I'm going to go and switch to deep analytics, and I'm going to start with a new query. In here, I'm going to go and choose the marketing share. Again, if I leave it blank, it's going to run across the entire organization. I want to run this just for that one marketing share. I'm going to choose that. I'm going to come to owner, and I'm going to use this toggle switch. I'm sorry, this radio button here. It says undefined owner. So when I do that and hit run, now I can give Darren a preview of, again, that heat map, but I can also dive into the details of the files that no longer belong to any owners. What's really cool about this is I can today download this report. There's a really cool update coming in a future release, but also today we can do this behind the scenes where rather than just download this into a CSV, we can extract this data into Apache Iceberg format. So you can start uploading and sending this data to Databricks, Snowflake, Microsoft Fabric to model it however you want. And it's not one time. You can have this going on a rinse and repeat basis as frequently as you want or as infrequently as you want, allowing you the power and flexibility to take your metadata and sometimes even enriched metadata into, again, the Snowflakes, the Databricks, the Microsoft Fabrics of the world. It was, Darren, was it Snowflake that published some stats recently that even in Snowflake, they're having a challenge where only 0.5% of unstructured data is reported in Snowflake today. And that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, unstructured data drives the world. I mean, what was the other stat? There was something like 80% of the data in the world was unstructured.
Yeah. In
That's
the
a blind
enterprise,
spot.
80% of data is unstructured, and only, less than 1% of that today is reaching the data lakehouse.
That's a blind spot in the industry that you can solve, our customers can solve for their individual organizations at the click of a button.
So just on this one, now that you've created the query, you've basically kind of replicated the out of the box report that you get in the reports tab. And
Yeah.
now I want to do something with this. So can you just talk again? I kind of come back to deep analytics because I really feel
Yeah.
like that's where the power is. So what if I want to then take this data and do something with it?
Yep. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this query and I'm going to make it, by default, it's private, so only my user ID can see it. I want Darren and anyone else in his organization to see this as well, so they can run it whenever they want. Marketing data to archive is what I'm going to call this. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. So now when Darren logs into Komprise, he can also see this on a regular basis. But now I have two ways to act upon this. I save the query so I can create a plan based on this query, or I can also apply tags. We talk about that metadata enrichment in the global metadata base. So I can tag this data for review. And then if I want to tag it for review, then Darren could further refine it because the deep analytics role within Komprise is not just an administrator role. There is role-based access control so that I can turn around and not have Darren be an admin, but I can have Darren be a data steward within Komprise and say, Darren, I've created this query for you. Darren can create his own queries, but I can also say Darren can only see his marketing share. And he can, just like I can, let me go back here a second. Let me go back to the main queries. Darren can create queries of his own. He can create tags. He can help me further refine what we need to tier and archive. I can even have a tiering operation set up behind the scenes where Darren comes in, he runs the query that's already been saved for him. So I'll say marketing data to archive. He can come in here and say, okay, I want to reduce this further because I want to look at last access date. And I want to say more than 3 years ago. Run. So that further refines it and gets me down to 50,000 files and 2 terabytes. Because we talk about, hey, some users may still be using that data, but if it's orphaned and it hasn't been touched in 3 years, we need to do something about that now. So Darren can simply apply a tag. When he applies the tag, we can have something in here called archive. And then
more like delete.
yeah, or delete. Yeah, it could be delete as well. We'll talk about those two options here based on this. So that's a great segue again into the next page we're going to show. So Darren can create a tag called archive equals yes. It hits add tag. I can turn around and have a tiering or a confine or a deletion set up to do something based on these tags that Darren's applying. Again, further enrichment of your metadata.
So really it starts with that showback. You're giving me transparency, and now we can actually do something. So it's insight plus action. Love it.
Make a data-driven decision. And it's going to be around cost. It's right now, in the future, today and in the future, we're never going to get rid of the people watching how much storage costs on a reoccurring basis. It's going to be a while until we're through the shortage that we're facing right now with storage. So you have flash that is at an all-time premium right now. Spinning disk manufacturing went down a couple of years ago. So with flash prices up here, spinning disk unavailable, storage prices are just crazy today. I mean, storage appliances that you could buy over a year ago are now 3, 4, 5x what they were, if you can even get your hands on them. I've been working with some customers who are pretty large organizations and usually have pull in the industry. They've said, we can't even use our brand to get us any favors right now. We have to take a different approach. We have to be more conscious of our cost. We have to be more conscious of our capacity, and we have to create a system that allows us to have infinite storage of the data of the storage we have today. So we have to be able to delete old data. We have to be able to burst to the cloud. We have to be able to use our object storage that we already have today on-prem for cheaper cold data. So
and in terms of industry, we've seen a lot of adoption of the showback model in healthcare, where you've got research teams, creating tons of data that they just need for short periods of time. So giving them some of that self-service. I've seen a lot of it in higher ed as well as life sciences. And anything you talk about in terms of industry adoption?
Yeah, well, a lot of that, Darren, ties back to that deep analytics user role, empowering the end users to make decisions. When you start doing the showback, the chargeback, you become more cost conscious. Your teams start understanding how much what feels like this infinite storage really costs the organization. That compass earlier, managing north, south, east, west. So the deep analytics role allows individual users, teams, data stewards to make decisions or help you make decisions with their data, because they can come in here, they can filter, they can create queries, they can create tags that define what happens to that data. Again, you pointed out, we can have a tag for delete, we can have a tag for archive, we can have a tag for tier, because with Komprise, you can have a traditional archiving process so that users don't have access to data. You can have the tiering operations where users always have access to the data. It's just on colder storage. You can permanently delete that. Before you permanently delete that, you can have a staging area, again, where your compliance teams, your lawyers can go through that data to make sure we're not deleting something on legal hold. Speaking of legal hold, another great function for that deep analytics role is for your legal team. Give them the ability to tag the data subject to legal hold, so that users, teams, your plans know not to do something with those data if it's subject to legal hold. You could even take it out. You can ring fence that data. So if there's data subject to legal hold, you can create a copy of it. You can move it to a landing zone that legal pays for, because now you're subject to keep that, you are required to keep that data for X number of months, weeks, years, infinitely, that's subject to legal hold. So have the legal team pay for that. Here's your landing zone. This is how much it's going to cost you year over year to host that data. So, Darren, we talked about TFT. Do we want to kind of
Before that, is
showcase?
there anything else on reports and scheduling you want to cover? Maybe any questions people have? Looks like we got a question coming in here. Let's see.
Great. Yeah, if you have any questions, let's cover those.
Here's one. For the tagging, can it label a file as PHI or confidential? So hit that one first.
Yeah, so with our tags, you have full flexibility to turn around and define your own tags. So these are the sample tags that I have inside of my demo environment here today, but you can create any number of key pair values that you want. So if you want to have a key that says, I want to say data sensitivity, and then the value could be EPHI, it could be financial, it could be MA201, it could be GDPR. You can define this in any shape or format that you'd like.
And it's automatic labeling? Is it manual tagging?
The queries. So you simply just create a query, use the query, rationalize the data set, apply tags. That's it. And that's
Um,
also a good point too. So if you actually have a third-party process that knows where this data is, everything in Komprise is API accessible. All you have to do is call that tagging API through that third-party process. We'll apply the tags for you automatically, even on a recurring basis.
do you want to just show the PHI feature in Smart Data Workflows for a second,
Oh yeah, sure. Speaking of, yeah, that's another great example. So if I wanted to turn around and also leverage Komprise to find my PHI, well, that's what we call our smart data workflows. So I'm going to hit add workflow. Within add workflow, I can turn around and choose from, in this case, either my built-in PII scanner, which is going to be 68 built-in content scanners, or you can write a regular expression. So I refer to the PII scanner as your quick start guide. I need to find these things really quickly. So maybe it's a social security number. So I'll pick social security number, click next. I can choose my storage, or I can base it off of a deep analytics query. So if I want to look at a legal hold, for example, I only want to look in there for sensitive data. So I'm going to choose my legal hold. I'm going to click next. And now again, I get to provide my tag for sensitive data. So I'm going to say legal data type. I'm going to click next. Because I'm using one of the 68 built-in content scanners, the value of that key I just created will be the name of the content scanner. So it'll be a social security number. I get to choose whether I want this scan to run one time or repeating. If it's repeating, how frequently or infrequently does it run? Do I want it to run on the entire data set again? Or do I want it to run on just changes, which also includes new data? I get to say start this automatically or not at the end of the workflow that I'm working through right now. I get to give it a name. So I'm going to say one time, start automatically, legal SSN. I'm going to hit next. A lot like our migrations, you get to recap the workflow, and then I hit start workflow. So what I'm looking for is sensitive data inside that legal folder. So when I click on this, I get the details of this iteration. So eligible files to be scanned, 322. I've already found 2 files that have been tagged with having social security numbers. I get the scan progress. I get the current run on the number of scan files, any errors remaining to be scanned. I get some stats, some stats on how long this is running. I get to see what social or what PII type I'm looking for again, and the key that I'm using, legal data type. So
and
database.
we have a whole webinar on this topic, lots of content, but here the difference is you're actually cracking open the file. So you're looking inside the
Yes.
files. So you want to be
Yep.
very specific on where you're searching, where you're doing that scan.
Yep. Exactly. So I'm going to go back to deep analytics to see more about those tags. Simply new query, Komprise tag, legal data type, social security number, run. Now I get to see all the data that's been tagged in the legal folder as containing social security numbers. So now I can notify the legal team of, hey, we found data. You might want to do something about that before you turn it over for discovery, because it may not be required for the legal discovery. And Darren, as you pointed out, this is not just looking at the metadata. This is diving inside the file, looking for whatever you need. In this case, social security numbers.
And Ben,
It's
we
a
got a
little,
comment here that's really interesting. I thought we kind of backed up the business case. In a finance customer, we had 96% cold data across petabytes of data. Decisions were the most difficult bit because of the challenges of identifying the actual data owners. So actually agreeing on the actions was fully dependent on finding those owners, as storage owners could not make the decisions. Does it sound familiar?
it's very, very familiar. And actually, there's another great question, Darren, we should answer right after this one.
Yeah, well,
about
scanning
changing the
data,
access
update the
times.
last access date.
Yeah. So I want to come back. I'll circle back to that in a second. So that is what you just asked was a huge challenge in my organization, and the fear of making decisions, tiering and archiving data, who's the owner, allowing them to say yes or no. That is something that's why I partnered with Komprise as a customer, because of the transparent move technology. Komprise allows you to transparently move the data. The users, the applications don't know anything different. It's just on a colder tier of storage. So behind the scenes, when you choose to tier data, Komprise leaves what we call our dynamic link behind. Again, users, applications, they see it as the regular file. When they open it, the data is streamed back from the what we call the target. A lot of times that's cloud storage. It's going to be your AWS, your Google, your Azure, your Wasabi, whatever it might be. It's just a different class of storage, typically a much lower cost tier of storage. And the environment, the user experience is not that much different, because you're talking about a couple files, cold storage coming back over your WAN link or your direct connect to the cloud storage. So I think, Darren, you just posted the article in there.
Let's get to that scanning question.
Yeah, I'll get there. So yeah, the transparent move technology was what made the program successful for me and many of our other customers. All right, back to the other question, which was about when I start doing PII, content scanning, cracking the files open, does it modify the access time? No, we preserve that. There's a lot of other vendors in this space that will destroy your access times. They'll overwrite them. They're not what I would consider good corporate citizens. We are. This goes back to our core and our foundation on what we do across the entire platform. The tiering and archive, preserve the access time. Migrations, you have the option to preserve the access time. It's always turned on by default. The plan operations, the workflows, the Kappa data services that we haven't talked about yet, we always preserve your access times.
All right, let's get to some of our closing.
Yeah.
Go back to the presentation.
Oh, the
So
update. This is really cool. I'm so looking forward to this release.
yeah, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, so this goes back to the TFT, transparent file tables. This is the integration with Apache Iceberg, getting your metadata, your enriched metadata database over to Snowflake, Databricks, filling that void that exists out there, is making decisions while using those platforms. Again, Snowflake, Databricks, Microsoft Fabric. As long as it's compatible with Apache Iceberg, you can seamlessly import tables into those environments, helping you just drive your decisions today and in the future. And it's just simply export. You choose local or you choose export to a data store. In this case, data store, extract that table, import it, done.
So reach out to your account team. We can actually get some of this going today, and it'll show up in the UI in an upcoming release, the next release.
Yep.
So
early
Ben,
access is out there today. Yep.
let's bring it back to reports. What's the next step? What should I do Monday?
Absolutely. So set your cost model and evaluate CapEx, OpEx. We talked about the differences between them, what costs go into each of them, and build the showback report. Just build the basic showback report that goes across the enterprise and understand how much your storage is costing. After you get over the sticker shock, start defining it, start scheduling reports. Again, that compass, north, south, east, west, manage across the board so that everyone knows how much their individual shares, teams, organizations are leading to that sprawl. I think I've used this recently, and this actually came from a customer, the digital landfill. How much did that digital landfill cost me day over day, year over year? All right. Then we go into ways to look for reducing this. This goes into rot. This goes into aging data, and that's the tiering and archiving. It's the orphan data. It's the duplicates. There's some really quick wins to shed some of those storage costs. If you're facing the situation where you're almost out of capacity and you don't want to or can't expand your storage, again, tiering and archiving. So it doesn't just have to be about expanding your storage. It's also about being a good corporate citizen. Just because you can go buy another shelf because you can doesn't mean you should. It goes back to that cost, understanding total cost of ownership. It's a lot of times it's not responsible just add another shelf of storage. Let's understand how much of this legacy data we're dragging around because it's doing nothing, and let's put it on a tier of storage that represents the actual data it is today. In addition to that, as you're going through tiering and archiving, you're sanitizing your data, you're flagging your data as sensitive, you're setting yourself up to be ready for AI. The whole story around AI is about finding the most current data, the most valuable data. So you're mining your data to train your models. Again, that goes into the metadata base, the metadata we have, working with Snowflake, Databricks, Microsoft Fabric, make valid decisions, rationalize the data set, send it to AI, train your model, rinse and repeat.
Did you have some department or one department that you would typically get on board and then evangelize, look at how great they're doing? Like how it's so easier said than done to do this sort of centrally across teams. What's your guidance there to
I
get
started
kind
with
of
my own
get this going?
organization. So, yeah, I started with my own organization within digital technology and said, here, this is our spend. And you talked about those meetings I had weekly. Jumped on the first call, threw that presentation up there. This is how much the organization's paying. This is how much we are our own consumers. And it was that jaw drop moment of, wait, what? We're contributing to this much to the spend? Yeah, let's do something about that. So it was creating internal champions, cross-functional champions saying, okay, digital technology is costing the organization this much by our own storage. Let's fix that. And then we can replicate that across the rest of the enterprise.
Awesome. And then you talked about the deep analytics role. First we've got to get going on deep analytics, but then provisioning that seems like a really important part of showback.
Yes, empower end users. Let them make decisions. Let them tag their data as eligible for archiving, eligible for deletion. And it's the end users, data stewards, legal team, compliance team. Make this a team sport.
Love it. All right. So that brings us to the wrap. Hopefully, people got some good nuggets, some good ideas out of this. The recording will be up on the website shortly. Our next topic is going to be on data migration. We've got a lot of new updates in the latest release to share with you all on the data migration area of the product line. But do look on the website for some of these recordings and let us know what topics you want to cover. I'm going to give you the last word, Ben. I mean, this is a passionate area for you. Any final thoughts?
Again, just know your spend, know your sprawl, and just empower everyone to help you make decisions. Don't go at it alone.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen so I don't see if there's any other comments or questions. You see anything else coming in?
I think we answered most of them there.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for attending. We look forward to the next session and let the feedback, send us any feedback you have or suggestions. Thank you.